Oh, hey, a fun one today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the No One Asked for This podcast. Today we have an absolute powerhouse in just like the world of education. Everybody's seen like TikTok teachers, everybody's seen TikTokers in general, but it's not every day you get a TikTok principal who is just like going viral left and right. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have Principal Lamb with us. He's a veteran principal. He's leading the way, in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of a lot of people, is leading the way for educators to do their job in a productive way that's not robotic, that's not like super stressful, and in a way that makes students feel like the person leading them is actually concerned about their best interests. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have Principal Lamb. Principal Lamb, who asked for this podcast?
Tyler, first of all, it's an honor to be here, but I don't actually know anyone who has asked for this podcast.
So fair. So fair. I love it.
But nevertheless, I'm glad to be here.
No, this is great. I think, okay, so selfishly, obviously, I taught for 5 years, and it's like I have had so many terrible, some great experiences with principals. And I think that there's this like discrepancy between like, I don't know. I think another way to put it is like there's a very solid line between like teachers and admin. And I think in a lot of ways, I would go so far as to assume that part of the reason why your platform has gotten to the point that it has is because you're not like many other administrators. One thing that I'm curious about is like, talk to me about how you ended up in the role that you're in right now. And don't take this the wrong way, why did you end up going into admin?
So I never had any aspirations to become a school leader, a principal, any of that. I taught middle school math. I was teaching high school biology. And I was just, I was a struggling beginning teacher. And after about my third, fourth year, I started to find my footing a little bit. I was actually in the wild, wild west in New Orleans. And Hurricane Katrina came through. So it kind of revamped the whole education system. My principal said, I was teaching math at the time. My principal said, I'm leaving. I'm taking a job for the district, and we want you to step in and become the principal. And I looked at him and I said, I have no idea how to do that. I am just trying to figure out how to teach math here. And so I kind of jumped into the role with no experience, no training, no adult management experience. I really sucked it up in the beginning. And so I told myself, well, there's either two options here. One, I can either quit, or two, I can try to figure it out. And so here I am 15 years later.
Oh my God. I mean, I didn't even realize. So one thing that like the viewers should know is I actually I kind of make a point to not do too much research. Like I've seen your page 100,000 times, but I love being able to go into conversations like this and like really hear these things for the first time. Okay, so you mentioned Hurricane Katrina coming in and how that like completely shifted things. What was that like as a teacher? Because I mean, in my own experience with like traumatic things happening in the world is like my very first year of teaching was the same year that COVID hit. Fun fact. Wow. So I'm in my first year teaching. I took the most ridiculous job that anyone's ever heard. I've told this story way too many times. My first job. So I went into teaching at a school that was like connected to my college. So when I was like in my 4 undergrad years, this school, we were like kind of working with the education department. So they were like, hey, when you graduate, let us know because we have a bunch of spots. It's like sort of a pipeline. And it's this little Catholic school down the street. And when I got out, they needed a spot filled. And I was an education and English major with the goal of being a secondary education English teacher. And they called me in the office one day and they're like, hey, so we have a spot that we think you're going to love. It's called Stream in Writing, which you probably understand the acronym. But if you don't, or if anyone else doesn't, that's science, technology, religion, engineering, arts, math, and
You're
writing.
doing it all.
literally. And do you know what the grades were? K2 through sixth grade. I'm like,
I-
what am I like? What else is there for me to teach? So I took this job. I don't know anything about engineering or math or science or, frankly, let's be real, religion. If you walk into a religion class and you see my dumbass up there, you're in the wrong class. But like, I think like in that moment, I was like, this is sick. Like I get the opportunity to say in the future that like I did this, and did I do a great job? Hell no. But I think that it was a really good opportunity to get thrown into the wolves. So for you, when you had to experience teaching before, during, and after Hurricane Katrina, that must have been insane.
Yeah, it was I mean, it was a wild experience, but I'll tell you, it's what has me. It's why I'll be a lifelong educator.
Yeah.
So it was the start of my third year of teaching when Katrina came through. So I was just a couple days into the start of the school year,
Mm-hmm.
and so I evacuate from New Orleans. I don't know what I'm going to do, and I get this call, and it was from some educators who I knew, and they said we're starting a school in Houston for kids who have evacuated from New Orleans. And
Wow.
so it was just this wild experience where I go to Houston. I'm like, and again, I've been out of school for a week now. I've just been watching CNN and watching the news reports of just everything that's going on in New Orleans with the flooding. And so I get to Houston. I'm like, I'm ready to teach. Like I was ready to go in the classroom and jump in there tomorrow.
Sure.
Of course, they're like, okay, we got to figure out a building. We got to figure out all of this. And so I actually go in and me and a few of my teacher buddies, we're like walking through the Reliance Center, the Astrodome, and it was students and families who have just lost everything, and so we have kids. I remember holding up this poster that says New Orleans teachers, New Orleans students, and we have kids who are like coming up from the cots in the Astrodome in the Reliance Center, saying like, "Oh, what school do you teach at? What school do you work at?" And so
Oh
over
my
a 2 week
God.
time period, we got a school set up. I taught sixth grade math that year, and it was just a wild experience. But I think that was my why I will forever do this work, because I saw just how resilient the students were in the aftermath of everything that they had endured.
It's true. And I mean, that's like it's hard to it's almost like something you would hear in a movie or a book. And I think that when it comes to those like really difficult moments, what was tricky in my experience about COVID, and you were a principal during COVID, right?
Yes,
Okay, so I'll let you jump in
we
on
can
that too,
relate.
because I can only friggin' imagine. But like as a teacher, I think it was difficult because I think with your experience of Hurricane Katrina and seeing the resilience of the students, I think in a weird way, the fact that when COVID hit, it was so something that like everybody in America hadn't experienced, that there weren't many people to be like, all right, we've dealt with this, let's deal with it, you know? And like, for instance, with like Hurricane Katrina, like we've had significant tornadoes, we've had significant
Sure,
earthquakes, we've had like situations with that where there's like a little bit of an understanding of like, all right, this is awful. It shouldn't be happening to anybody, but it's happening. This is how we're going to deal with it. I feel like when COVID started, what was really tricky was that like I didn't know what the hell was going on. You know,
yes,
the admin in my school didn't know what the hell was going on. My students' parents didn't know what was going on. So it was a lot of like I feel like when COVID hit as a teacher, part of my job is like let's chill everyone out and let's try to like really
absolutely.
focus in. But I think the problem was like I was thinking to myself, I have asthma, So when they started talking about like who this is going to affect, they're like, if
Yes,
you have asthma, don't leave your house. They're like, if you got asthma, don't leave your house. If you have like any pre-existing like issues, don't leave. And I'm sitting there in front of the kids, and like obviously I'm pretty good at like chilling people out, like keeping everything being water in the classroom. But when that happened, like it was hard to mask my own fears towards it all because I was like, I'm kind of up there on that like you might need a ventilator list, and that was sketchy. And the students like
yes,
one of my biggest strengths in my class is that like I am transparent with the kids. Like when I'm having a really tough day, I talk to them about it. When I'm having a really great day, I don't shut up about it. So when that happened, it was really tricky because I didn't know what was going to happen a week later. What was it like for you because as an administrator, You're dealing with every layer. What was that like?
Yes, I mean, I just remember hopping on Zoom calls, and again, I have 3 young kids, so
Hmm.
COVID was chaos for me because I couldn't even control my own 3 children who are running around my house in the background of all these Zoom calls. So like that was
Crazy.
it was I was trying to we were trying to do pop-up school with my wife and I, and I
Terrible.
and so I just remember just getting really frustrated with my kids. I'm like I'm on the Zoom. We have 50 staff members, and you got to shut up. And and so trying to balance that, but then yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. Like I'm on this Zoom call with 50 teachers who are all looking at me saying, "Okay, what's happening? What's going on?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
I actually don't know. And so I think that was the biggest challenge, was like it was just like so much ambiguity and just not knowing, oh, when are we going back? What is going to happen next? And so I think like what we just kind of fell back on is like we're just going to like continue to communicate, and even if we can't communicate, we don't know what's happening next. Even if that's the message, at least we're having those touch points and just supporting each other.
It's true. And I think that, well, another thing that made that year horrible was like the minute that I finished my undergrad, I was doing my master's degree on a rushed timeline. So my master's degree was supposed to be 3 years. They're like, if you really pump this out, you'll get it done in a year and a half. Or yeah, they said if you really pumped it out, you get it done in a year and a half. And I was like, I'd like to graduate in May of the next year. And they're like, why? And I was like, I don't want to spend any extra time on it. And I know how this works. I know that you're going to charge me more the minute I start that half year. We're not doing it. So I was I was doing my master's degree, and naturally that schedule got affected as well because now I'm taking, so it was like going to school during the day, so I'd get there a little early. I'd be there at like 6:45. I'd do school and then I'd do night classes. But
Wow.
it's funny that when COVID hit, obviously I can't go in person for night classes. The woman who helped advise my master's thesis was like, if it wasn't for COVID, I I don't think you would have finished. I don't think you would have written your whole thesis. I think that it wouldn't have been as high quality as it was. Because when COVID started out, again, like, all of my administrators were like, we don't know what to do. So we're gonna push the start time of the school day a little later. So I'd still wake up at 6 and I'd be typing the whole day, and then the
Yes.
minute that the minute that school started, I would put that to the side. And I kind of, okay, this is gonna come off bad, but I kind of owe my master's degree to the COVID pandemic because it literally gave me that time in the morning to get something done. But all that to say, it was like, it was terrible. It was really, really bad. And that first year, I wouldn't go back to it, but I
Yes.
also know that I wouldn't be as, like, resilient's a good word to put it, because it's like, what's going to happen in the class that I haven't sort of already seen, like the little
Yes.
stuff that kids do that's insane doesn't stop just because there's a pandemic. They're just doing it through a computer now. The difference is I can just click mute. It's a beautiful superpower. But
I think that one of the things that was also, I just found it fascinating when we started to come back from COVID, like
mhm,
that was just like also just like I found that just to be such a weird experience too, because then you're trying to do the hybrid, and we have some kids who are joining virtually and some kids who are in person, and it was just like it was just a mess. And then
yeah.
I just remember all, as an administrator, I was always fielding the calls of like would get an update in the evening. The nurse would call me. It would be 6 p.m. in the evening, and she'd say, "Oh,
Hmm.
this kid just tested positive." And so then, I'm sitting down to dinner with my family, and then we got to make 30 phone calls to all the classmates saying, "Okay, this class is quarantined. Everyone's got to stay home." And so it was just
Jesus.
I've really blocked that out until this moment of bringing it up on the pod.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I love forcing people to trauma dump on my podcast. It's like my favorite thing in the world. But I will say I have a direction that I need to go in because it's something that I'm so curious about. So obviously you have taken your occupation and what you do and moved it onto social media. Did you ever, because I know that teachers, there's a huge amount of things that a lot of people don't realize, like legal foundations that we cannot cross when it comes to social media. And for me, it's actually created like an interesting situation with admin in the past, because some of them see it and they're like, absolutely not. You will not make any videos that have anything to do with students, with the school. You can't show like the school's name, anything like this. But then I've also had like in the school that I was previously in, they mentioned my social media in the interview, and they mentioned how like the positivity that they see on my social media is something that they're actually really interested in. So for you as a principal, especially, did you ever get any level of like pushback from like the DOE, like the Department of Education?
So let me start by just sharing kind of how I started with this whole
Yeah,
social media
please.
thing. Like when I first started, so I'm like not like I'm not cool. I didn't even have a TikTok account, and so but there was a local Louisiana principal who he was talking about how he used social media and TikTok specifically as a recruitment tool for teachers. And so I read this article in the local publication here in Louisiana, and I said that would be really awesome. So I kind of like this is in the middle of school year. I kind of put a pin on it and just kind of kept it in the back of my head. And so it was on a Saturday. We had just finished the last day of school was on a Friday. This is in June, and I came to school on a Saturday. My kids and my wife were out of town, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to go and do this because if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I came to school the Saturday after we finished. This was 2 years ago. I literally signed up for a TikTok account while I'm at school. So I've never even logged in. I don't know how to use TikTok. And so I record this video about how I roll a cart around my school and I abandoned my principal's office for this rolling cart. I record the video. I don't, to show you how inept I am, Tyler, I don't even know how to watch the video before I hit post. So I record this video. I don't even know what it's going to look like. I hit post and I'm like, okay,
Jesus,
I'm done.
take the wheel.
I'm done. And so I remember I left. So I left school. I go get some dinner. And I'm looking at my TikTok account and I'm like, wow, this thing has like 7 views. And so I remember texting my wife. I'm like, my video has 7 views. Like, how cool is that? Like,
Go buy that boat, honey.
and so I wake up the next morning and the videos are over 1 million views. And so I was just
Your
like,
first, wait. I'm sorry. Back the hell up. Your first video got 1 million views?
my first video had over 1 million views. And I didn't even know how to use TikTok. So I didn't even come into it with like, oh, I have this whole social media plan. I was just like, I saw this principal do it for teacher recruitment, and I thought that was a cool idea. So let me post this, and then the thing went bonkers.
If my first video had gone from 7 views that day to 1 million overnight, my soul would have left my body. That is like now you're bringing back trauma for me. So I had somebody, because my followers are friggin' insane. I love them so much. They had scrolled and scrolled and scrolled on my page to find my very first video, Principal Lamb. When I tell you, it is so, oh, it's so bad. It's such a bad video.
I gotta scroll and see this.
No, you don't. Oh, don't worry. Once this goes public, everyone's going to be sending it to you. Don't stress it. Oh, I screwed myself on this one because I know I'm not going to edit this out. So my first video, do you know how you can put like pictures and then it does like an automatic template where it like transfers into a new one?
Yes.
Okay, Jared, when I tell you it's a picture of me with a fish and then another picture of me with a fish and then another picture of me with a fish, because my account was going to be a fishing account. It was going to be all fishing videos.
Starting a fishing account?
I'm a fisherman. My plan, let me tell you, my like escape route was my like, this is sick, we're going to be a millionaire, is I love teaching. I was going to teach the rest of my life and just like do that and not do anything with social media. My idea was, okay, well, I'll have this fishing account and I'll get sponsored by a fishing company and I'll be able to do free fishing contests and win money on fishing contests. So my dumbass post this stupid like slideshow of all these pictures of me with fish that are not impressive enough to be posting, with like this like stupid country song in the background, and it's the dumbest video you've ever seen. It's so stupid, and now people are finding it. It's like doing well now because these psycho followers are like sending it to everybody. It's got like 300 shares.
I didn't know you have that fishing skill set.
Well, that's why the account is fishing for clout, is because at first it was going to be a fishing account.
That's
That's what people
amazing.
don't realize. People are like, where'd the name come from? And I was like, if I followed me today and I saw all the stuff that I do, like all the education stuff, I would have no idea where I got the name either. But that's where it's from. And I think that the thing is that it's like, so here's where I'll like add to your story where it was like it blew up out of nowhere. I probably posted 300 probably 300 videos that have to do with fishing. Okay. Then I like posted one because my students, I've gotten so lucky with having just like the funniest students in the world.
I love
I'm
it.
like so blessed to have kids that have an accelerated sense of humor. And they would just like say the most outlandish things I've ever heard in my whole life. And I remember we were just playing this game because we had a lot of times where we just like at the end of the day we'd just be like hanging out and I didn't want the kids to just be sitting on their phones. I wanted to like be talking to them. So we'd
Yes.
always play this game where it was like name the celebrity, okay? And I would show
Hmm.
them someone who's like very very well known. I'd show them like a picture of Will Smith and be like, "Who is
Sure.
this?" Okay? And they'd be like, and for some in my head I was like, this brain rot generation. You don't know who Will Smith is? And then someone who was raised right was like, it's Will Smith. And they're like, that's the guy from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And I'm like, that's why I like you. But then I would like start doing this. And it was to the point where I was like, nobody's going to believe that they don't know who people like Will Smith is until I
Yes.
show them. So I started
You guys
recording
show
it
it.
and people lost it. People absolutely lost it. And then that sort of like rolling theme of like teaching in this generation is incredibly different from others. I realized because you probably already know this because you're successful on social media where it's like you need a niche. You need a niche and you got
Yes.
to lean into that niche. And I realized that when it came to the videos I was posting, students were interested because they thought it was funny and they also didn't know who I was showing them. Teachers thought it was funny because they're like, holy crap, I'm not the only one. Parents thought it was hilarious because they're like, yeah, I should probably culture my kids. And then it's like everyone else around, if you're not in education, you're wondering what the inside of a classroom looks like. And when I show some kid calling me skibbity toilet riz, all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh my God, that's what they deal with every single day. And then it just like, it went up from there. So that's why I find it so crazy for you to say, like, yeah, I posted my first video and it got 1 million views in one night. I would have lost my mind. I would have lost it. What was like the response to that?
Honestly, I was shocked because
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this principal thing for 15 years and I've just been, grinding, focus on the job. And then I post this one video and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even think like it shocked me that people were like so interested in what I was doing.
Yeah.
And the fact that like and so then I have people reaching out of like, oh, what cart did you order? I want to order a rolling cart. And I was like, I didn't think this was actually like particularly cool.
100%.
But I think that's what like kept me motivated. Like from that moment, then I was like, okay, I'm going to keep on creating content. And part of it was because I realized that like this is not just about me showcasing what I'm doing, but I'm actually able to share on a platform where it's information that other people are taking and then using to inform their own practice. And so that was
100%.
exciting for me. The fact that like other people thought that like this was actually something that can like help them in their work in their schools.
100%. It's like hosting a nationwide professional development, right?
Absolutely.
But I feel like, so here's one thing I will say. There have been so many instances where like educator TikTok accounts get like ripped to shreds. And people will say like, um, people will pull up these like weird opinions where it's like, it's kind of strange that you would ask your student how they are, or how you would
Yes.
like I posted a video where I was like just straight up giving advice to a student, right? Where I was like, if something's out of your control, let it go. If it's in your control, do something about it to as much as you
Yes.
can. Someone commented and was like, this isn't what you should be teaching when you're in school. And I'm like, have you lost your mind? What are we like? And those are the people who, in my personal opinion, are like what's dragging down education, because I've seen the effect that being a down to earth and actually thoughtful person to a student can have. Like, I've had students who didn't turn in an assignment for 2 straight school years and passed by the skin of their teeth. They came into my classroom, and this is in no way me trying to hype myself up. This is just a matter of fact. There are 1,000 things I do wrong as a teacher, but these students will come in, and the minute that I see them down the hall and I'm like, Dom, what's up? And I'm just like pumped, just like jumping up and
Yes.
down. And they're like, oh my God, Mr. J. Like, it's embarrassing, but they're also like, listen, this goon is ready to like jump up and down, dap me up, like give me a hug just because I'm here. Right. You know,
Yes.
and I always like go so hard in my classroom. So when I see these comments that are like, when you're in the classroom, focus on the curriculum, I'm like, I am, Janice. Can I like have a minute? Can I have a minute to,
So
I
in
don't
my
get it.
experience, yeah, well, my experience with it, Tyler, is like it's honestly, in the role of a principal, there's like an entire campus community, and so I feel like
Mhm.
with any decision I make or with anything that I do, it's always mixed bag in terms of response, and I can
Yeah.
come up with we will roll out a new initiative, and I'll be so excited about it. And we'll still have some teachers or some families or some students who don't like it. And so I
Mhm.
actually draw a lot of parallels between, like, when you're working with an entire campus community, there's always going to be people who have different opinions about various things at the school.
Of course.
And I and so I think, like, as you know, as I'm having people from social media throw shade at certain things I'm doing, I'm just like, this is actually kind of par for the course, because it is kind of part of the inherent job of being a school leader, that you're going to get negative comments about various things that you try to move forward.
100%. And I think that like like I have like a cousin who just started trying to get bigger, like doing TikTok stuff with being a teacher. And and I have a lot of friends that are getting into social media. And as soon as I talk to them about it, like, actually, I even had like a student, because I'm with 11th and 12th grade, and students who have graduated, the one who I did a podcast with like not too long ago, where I dressed up as the friggin' Lorax. It was nuts.
I
So
saw that.
like, that student started making content because she saw my account and she was like, he's just having fun. He's spreading like positivity in the school. And I think that,
Yes.
and she agreed on the fact that it's like, America, for so many reasons, could use a better rep when it comes to education. Because I have followers around the world, and they're like, teachers in America can be nice. There's not just like constant violence all the time inside of American schools. Like, kids can laugh. And I'm like, the fact that we feel that way at all, but I have such bad ADHD. But I was talking to the student, and they were like, their accounts started exploding because they're talking
Yes.
about what it's like to be my student. They're talking about like being a student in general, but they're getting like these weird comments, you know, and like some hate comments, and just saying stuff about me and saying stuff about my teaching strategy and how like I might be like too lax as an educator, and it's like doing them a disservice. And they'll reach out to me and they'll be like, should I like yell at this person? Should I like fight with this person? Should I do this, and this? And I'm like, listen, you need to understand, it doesn't matter what you do. If you post, if you don't post, if you post something about being a student, if you post something about not being a student, no matter what way you go, there's going to be someone sitting at home whose number one objective in the day is to find some way to bring people who are above them down. You know, and
Yes.
the fact of the matter is, like, your decision to reply and start fighting back, all it does is it gives them a platform. They see all of your followers, they see all your engagement, and they look at it as an opportunity to feed off of it and to get themselves onto your platform with your viewers. They don't care about the hate. They don't have their name or their face on their profile. It's like some picture of a teddy bear they got from Google, and their name is like Snoozy McDuff. Like, they have no responsibility here. All they want to do is try to get your attention. And if you give it to them, they win. And
Yes.
that's kind of like the fact of it. And it deters so many people from making content. So for you, have you had to like have that conversation with either yourself or the people in your community that do content?
I think for me, I've just a lot of my content is about the positivity
Yeah.
within education. I think, of course, there's always things we want to be better, but I think that was actually one of the things that inspired me to keep on creating content, was the fact that there's so many education platforms out there where it's like, teachers videos of, and again, I was a newbie to TikTok, right? So I signed up for this TikTok account. Suddenly my video goes viral. I get all the edu talk now. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm watching all these videos and I'm like my first week on TikTok, I'm like, I've just watched 20 videos of teachers packing up their classrooms and like quitting the profession. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is very depressing. And so
Yeah.
I think for me, that's also been like one of my personal goals, is like, how do we showcase like the positive? How do we showcase the things that are happening in a bright light within our schools? And so I haven't really got much pushback from my account. I mean, obviously, various people have hate comments that they want to write. That's par for the course. But just in terms of like the response that I've got from people in my education circle, most of it has been positive. And I think in part because I'm really deliberate about trying to just share a positive message.
Sure. And I think that one thing that's really interesting to me, because I've never been an administrator. I considered it for like 15 minutes, but I honestly, I genuinely think the schools need people who are a little more organized. Like I'm not a very well organized person. I would end up running the school into the ground. We would have fun, but it would be the end of the school. So I think that's the problem for me. But for you, you have and I'm assuming that you are in charge of hiring. You have a very interesting position where it comes to hiring people to teach this generation. And you said you work with elementary or middle school now?
I'm all the way through. So I support two campuses, and then
Sure.
one of the campuses I support is a K through 10th grade, and then the other campus is a
Oh.
K5. So I see the whole. I got the littles all the way through high school students.
So here's my question. Do you think that there are certain characteristics that people need in order to become a teacher today? Like if somebody was applying to join the school year after this one's over, what are some characteristics that you're looking out for that would make someone able to be a teacher in 2024? Because I don't think it's the same as it's been.
I think that I think I always look for like people who can build strong relationships. I think that at its core is so important. And I always make the joke on my social media page about like, oh, the administrator who asks the teacher, oh, have you tried building a relationship with the student?
Yeah.
But I do think like students who just feel that connection to the teacher are going to be so much more productive in those classes. And so for teachers who are able to build that rapport, to build that positivity with their students, it just takes it so far. So that's definitely one of the things I select for. And even, I think, of course, we want teachers who have the content expertise and who have that pedagogy down. But I'm looking for an adult who can walk in the room and just connect with students and captivate their interests. And I think a big part of that is just like the relationship piece. What do you think?
100%. I mean, I think what's different about teachers these days in comparison to, in fairness, I'm speaking about a time in history that I did not live through. I'm just taking this based on teachers I've had who were from this time of history in comparison to teachers I've seen today. I think that the like authoritarian expectation of teachers to be like the leader and like the alpha in the classroom, and people are going to run away with that one. But this idea that a teacher needs to be like this intensely strict like sergeant style person in order to get students to trust what they're saying or do what they say, I think is the craziest thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. And I've seen teachers in recent years who try to come into the classroom, especially first year teachers. They come to the classroom and they've been educated in this idea. Because when I was an education major and we would read texts, I had one professor who literally gave us a textbook on how to teach and like the pedagogical side of things that was literally written in 1955. Okay. So in the first day I looked at her and I was like, why the hell are we reading a textbook from 1955? And she would tell me, she would be like, well, a lot of the themes you're going to see in this book are going to play out in the modern day as well. And I'm like, sure, but can't we pick and choose so I don't fully learn how to be like, who's that principal from Matilda? Damn. Trenchbull. So I don't like read a master class on how to become Miss Trenchbull. And I think for me, to answer your question, it's like, I think a teacher these days, it's not a question of if you get into like a better, closer relationship with these students, it's when. And a lot of teachers, when
Yes.
they come in, they're like, I'm going to be that strict authoritarian. And it's like, all right, see you in January. Let me know what happens when you do the new year, new me, and you try to start being like a nicer, more down to earth teacher. And your students get to have what? 5 more months of not hating you after the first half of the year. It's like you're screwing yourself. And I think that a lot of teachers don't realize that students need baseline, they need to be supported. The first thing that they
Yes.
need is they need you to know that you're an example of how to be there for them as a human being. Okay. Being a
Yes.
student is such a small part of being a human. And in a funny way, while being a student is such a small part of who they are and their identity, it's for some reason such a large consideration when it comes to teachers like caring about their lives, when in reality, you don't know what's going on for the first 4 hours of their day before you catch them. You don't know what happens after school. And the defining qualities of that student could have a lot more to do with outside of the school than them as a student. So the minute that
Yes.
you're willing to look at students and just like make it clear that I will literally halt this curriculum to a complete screech if I feel like we are not on the same page as human beings. Because
Yes.
I know that everything I say is going to go in one ear and right out the other if you don't like me, you know? And that's why in the beginning of the year, rather what I learned in my years teaching was like, if you come at them at a 10, they're going to meet you back at a 10 and you're going to be walking your way back the whole school year. So in the first day of school, I always tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to assume that everyone here is in distress and you need to be saved by Mr. J. It's not the case. So many students are
Yes.
not in that situation. But I tell them, I'm like, listen, if you ever need an ear, if you ever need a shoulder, if you ever need just somebody to sit there and do this while you dump everything that you are dealing with at the moment, I got you. It doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be in a half of a year. It doesn't have to be in the school year. I am here for you. Because when those moments arise, they're going to remember whether or not you made it clear that that's something you care about. And that helped me develop some of the closest relationships I've ever had with anyone inside of a school, to the point where I have a student of mine who comes on the podcast with me and she's able to literally pay her way through college using money from TikTok that I was able to teach her how to use it. It's a beautiful thing.
That's amazing.
Like
I,
you got to do it.
I think, as you described, like the relationship piece with students, like that, I was thinking about how that's also like I would say it's a similar dynamic between myself and the educators on our team, where I think about like the vision of my own principal when I was in elementary school, and I just have that vision of the principal who sat in the office and maybe came out once in a while and was kind of very businesslike.
Mhm.
I think that's the relationship piece not only goes for students, but like that's what I want our teachers and our staff to be able to feel is that look, I'm there to support you. Yes, we have these mandates and these certain things and these protocols and stuff, but at the end of the day, I actually care about you as a person, and I want you to
Yep.
be successful and happy and enjoy working here too. And so I think there's something you said for just being a conscientious and caring human.
100%. And I think that and like I was gonna ask, and I'm gonna still ask, is like, what is the thing that separates you from other administrators? Because like on paper, any administrator could get on TikTok and do what you do. But I think that what we come to find is that if every administrator got on TikTok and were themselves, most people would not be most people would not be as successful as you are. And that's because you do things differently, and like I remember one of the biggest issues I had, because in that first school that I was talking about, I was there for a couple of years, and there was just like this open swinging door of people coming in and out trying to do administrative opportunities. And it was almost always people who were like, you know what, I tried teaching, did it for 2.5 years, quit halfway through the second year, or quit halfway through the third year, and I don't want to do this, so I'm going to become an administrator. And I'm like, great, you're you're
That
going to
may not
bring
be the
in,
right reason.
you're going to change this place. You're going to, yeah, you're going to freedom writers your way into this. And I just like, I would deal with these administrators who they had this problem. And this is the thing that I think is a killer in my time as a teacher was it's just like, it's the toxic positivity. Okay. It's that awful, appalling moment where you're having the crappiest day you've ever had. The students are on 12, okay? You're tired. You didn't sleep at all. You're sick. You're pushing pennies together trying to pay rent because we went into education, right? And then I have this principal who's coming in and they're like, "Isn't it a beautiful day?" And I'm like, "Shut up right now." I like the best administrators I've ever had were the ones who pulled me aside and they're like, "You look like you need to like vent. Can you just come into my office and vent?" And I would say her name, but I can't because I shouldn't because she's now back working at that first school and that'd be wrong. But I had one administrator who came in and she was only an administrator for 1 year before she went off and did something new. But I will give it to her, she was the one who was willing to say, like, if you ever need to come in my office and vent, I won't talk. It's going to be a safe space. Tell me what you need to tell me. And there were so many times that I walked in there and I was like, I just need to talk, and
Yes.
that was the administrator who I felt the most safe with. And I feel like I did the best work because she was actually supportive. And then the year after, we got this like heavyweight like veteran principal who was like also I guess like a superintendent for a year or two, so she's like the top of the line when it comes to principals. And then she'd come in and it was just like this toxic positivity of like, if I'm having a tough day, she's like, "Well, it's almost over, see you tomorrow." And I'm like, that's not how it works. All you're doing is you're begging me to just like stack up this animosity towards what's going on right now and then spew it back out probably at the kids instead of you. And it took a lot of self-control to not direct that energy towards something that doesn't deserve it. So it's tricky. But like, did you ever
Yes.
have a moment where you had to like change what you were doing as an administrator because you saw like a response?
Yes, 100%. I think like for me, I mean, I was horrible when I first became an administrator. I didn't know what I was doing. I had never managed adults. I think, and to be honest, like I think I did bring some of that toxic positivity to it. I was like, because my vision of a leader was like, okay, I need to be the one who's like, who is projecting that like everything is going to be okay, and it was deep down inside, it was my own insecurities that had me projecting this toxic positivity. And I think what I recognized was it just came across as inauthentic to the people on our team. And so they were, teachers were going home having a miserable day. And I was like, "Oh, we're doing it. We're making it happen." And they're just like, who is this fool?
Yeah,
and,
that's always it.
And so I think for me, like it was honestly one of my biggest reflections was just like it was when I just was not successful in the role. And I as a younger administrator, I worked in schools where teachers quit on me because they didn't feel like they had the support they needed, and in part because I was the one projecting positivity when things were not in a strong place. And so I had to do some soul searching myself. And so I think the biggest thing and one of the biggest changes I've made is just to try to better empathize with what our teachers are going through. And for me, like what that looks like now in my day to day, I do morning rounds where I check in with every member of our team. And I just ask people like, "How are you? Anything I can do for you today?" And just
That's beautiful.
the simple act of just starting with that has just been a game changer because you're just opening up the door and inviting conversation and dialogue. And I think it's when those conversations and the dialogue die and when teachers start to feel frustrated and have mounting resentment, like that's when you lose.
100%. And I think another thing that always was like a real killer for me was the teachers or the principals that didn't have that self-awareness of like, he's obviously going through something. Maybe today's not the best day for an observation that's going to determine whether or not he should work here next year. And it was so annoying because they would do these drop-in observations, and every single time, not every single time, but there were some times where I was like, you're not getting the best me. And I wish you could like hear me out when I say like, I'm having a rough day. Because one thing that I think has always, in you're right, starting off the day with like this overarching sentiment of like, regardless of what happens from like a curriculum or a school standpoint, I want to make sure you're cool. 100% could not agree more, because that's sort of the energy that I've always taken in my classroom. And one thing that I like model that by is I talk to my students about mental health a lot. I'm
Yes.
so transparent with my students where I tell them, I'm like, I've like I'm diagnosed with anxiety, you know, and
Mm.
like I had such an issue with anxiety that it led me to having like a heart palpitation, and I had to get surgery like this time last year to get like a
Wow.
pacemaker put in my chest, because my anxiety disorder and mixed with like the solution of being a teacher and everything that gets thrown at you, it weighed on me, you know. And one thing that I told my students, I don't want them to ever think that it's their fault, because it's not.
Yes.
But I do want to be an example of saying, like, listen, I'm not at my best right now. You know, so I remember talking to them about it and how, and like my own journeys through like therapy and through like becoming medicated, being diagnosed ADHD at age 27, you know, and realizing that my sort of like inabilities as an adult and sort of like my shortcomings weren't necessarily my fault. And it's something that can like be improved and recognized. I think that when they saw me going through that and being open and honest and being like, listen, if I'm not at like peak energy, it's probably because like my anxiety is causing so many issues with me right now. And it's hard for me to be what you need, but we'll get back to there. I just need a hot second. And then I found my students saying the same thing. Like they would come in, they'd be like, oh my Christ, this one student was going through things at age 17 that I don't think anyone should ever go through in 150 years on this planet. And I think I might have been one of the first people to show them, like, I'm 27, I don't have everything figured out. Like, I'm just figuring out my mental health and like doing something about it.
Yes.
And she came up to me one day and she was like, Mr. J, I didn't sleep at all last night. I was up. I got family. A lot of them are, you know, really, really sick because they have like this sort of immunocompromising disease that they are dealing with, and it's very much like blood related. So a lot of her siblings have it, and she's the one who's in charge of working with them and making sure that they feel comfortable. She's like, I didn't sleep at all because everybody's having like an issue at the moment. She was like, I need probably 15 minutes to put my head down, and then I'll be able to get whatever work done you need. And I thought to myself, I was like, if every kid can feel this powerful to recognize what they're feeling, state what they need, do what they need, and then move along from there, the entire generation can take 7 steps forward. And that's where I realized that the work that is done, whether you're a TikTok teacher, TikTok principal, any type of educator, like the work we do is it's moving in a different direction. And I think that's a
Yes.
really beautiful thing, because what school has been for so long is the reason why it's wrong now. You
Mm.
know, I think that there's a lot of trickle down. I feel like there are a lot of snowballs moving in a lot of different directions and growing. But I think today's educators, today's principals, they're looking at students in a very different way. And it's causing a new trickle down effect. And I think that it's making for students who feel confident. They feel happy in the classroom. They feel a little more safe in the classroom in lieu of everything. And I think that it's just beautiful to see that on like your level and my level and the student level, you know, because
Yes.
that's what education needs. They need people saying this so the teachers are like, oh, I can do that, you
And
know?
just and what's I feel also like you started just sharing how like it was like you opening up about like what you're going through. And I think that just makes you more relatable, and then just like helps to build that trust. Like I'm sure that the student who you just shared, like I'm sure she wouldn't have shared that with you had you not been open about like what you're going through.
100%. And it's like we talk so much. Like when I taught elementary, it was like we taught so much about like modeling the things you want students to practice. I've never taught math effectively. I I like, but when you teach math, I've taken a lot of math classes, you do things by repetition, you do things by modeling. And the thing is, we don't model dealing with human situations. You know, sure, we can show that idiotic video of someone being like, today, Jane offered me a joint. I said no. And it's like, stop. Because while that conversation is important, you're not modeling it as a human. You're offloading and you're modeling it through some cartoon character. The students watch enough of Has Been Hotel. They don't need any more cartoons. Okay? Like, they don't need more cartoons. What they need is someone who's willing to be vulnerable enough to say, like, listen, I'm having a really tough time with my mental health recently. And it's causing me to feel this way, and this way. So if during the day you see that I'm a little more quiet, it's because I'm kind of going through a moment right now, and I would really appreciate just like a little bit of like leniency from you guys today. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, they're like, he's not like screaming in our ears to like open up our Chromebooks. And it's like, it makes the classroom feel different, you know?
Shifts the whole dynamic.
100%. And I think that's a really, really beautiful thing. One thing that I want to, because we've talked about some really beautiful moments in the classroom. One thing that I love to do on my page, and I know that I told you I had a hard stop at 4, we're good. One thing I do on my page is I feel like people don't see enough of what actually happens in the classroom. And every single day, teachers across the country and around the world have horror stories. And I have employed my followers and the internet to send me some of their horror stories. I have had millions sent to me, and I don't want to go so far as to say that I've enjoyed reading them, because some of them are horrific. But I would love to know, in your time teaching, administration, anything like this, is there a horror story that stands out to you?
Absolutely. I will. So I have many horror stories that I could share. One that jumps to mind though is this is my first year of teaching. So picture this. I'm teaching. I'm at a public high school. It's my last period biology class. I want you to picture the dynamics of this class. We have 36 students. I don't know what I'm doing in the classroom to begin with. And of the 36 students, it's 33 boys too. So this is 10th grade. It's 10th grade biology.
Oh,
and so
Christ.
I came in, I was like, you know what, rules, all that stuff. I was like, no, I'm going to be the fun teacher. I was going to be the fun biology teacher. So I come in out of the gate. I'm like, we're doing experiments and all this stuff. And I'm like, in retrospect, I probably should have put in a few classroom procedures before we started that. But, I was young and naive. And so we're going with it. So yeah. I'm teaching the scientific method. And so I have I have a plastic Gatorade bottle. And what I'm demonstrating is you put some paper towel into the Gatorade bottle, and then you get one of those lighters and with the barrel on it, and you light the paper towel on fire, and then put a peeled hard-boiled egg on top. And so what I was teaching through this model was the fire takes the oxygen and the egg gets sucked into the bottle. And so I'm like, I'm gonna hook students' interest with this right out of the gate. Well, sure. This is my third period class. I'm trying to light this paper towel, and what I don't realize is that if there's smoke in the barrel of the lighter, then it's just not going to work. Like the lighter won't light. And so I have all the students who are like watching. And again, this is like it's 10th graders. It's the first week of school. I don't know what I'm doing. But I have the kids. The kids are hooked in. All the students are like, "What's going to happen?" And so I'm trying to light this paper towel. And the thing it lights initially, and then the smoke starts coming up. And so now it won't. I can't get the lighter to light. Jesus, this bottle is now filled with smoke. And so now the students are starting to like get a little antsy, because now this whole demo that I'm doing is not working. So they're like, Mr. Lamb, why is it? This is boring, Mr. Lamb. This thing's not even working. And so I still remember I'm wearing this like gray shirt, and we're in Louisiana. It's August. And I'm starting to get progressively more and more nervous because this thing is not working. And so I remember like my armpit stains are just it's like these growing puddles underneath my arm. And it's just like, and so you can see it all over me. It's like sweat dripping down. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm not gonna be able to figure this out. And so then, so multiple students take out lighters that they have on their person, And they're like, everyone is coming in with like their fresh notebooks and fresh binders and everything. So I literally have two kids who now like make these like paper torches, light them up. And they're like, hey, use this, use this. Keep in mind, this is my first week on the job. I have no idea what I'm doing as a teacher. And now I have, and I don't even know, again, I've just started. I was teaching biology in a former history classroom. So like, I don't know where there's a fire extinguisher. I'm not teaching in like a science room. And so I just remember I grab one of the kids has this flaming torch, and I grab the kid's flaming torch. I shove it in the Gatorade bottle. And I think I just shoved the egg in the actual bottle. And I'm just like, demo over. Everyone sit down. And so to be where I am today and to have this principal social media account, like people don't understand, like I was almost fired my first week on the job. I would be like, there's a good chance like I was just like making fishing videos right now and posting pictures of my fish, trying to develop a fishing social media account.
Oh God. But honestly, if you didn't almost get fired in your first week, are you actually a good educator at all?
No, you have to, everyone has their stories.
Okay, so it's so funny that you went with a science direction in your first year, because I have like the same like brand of story. This was friggin' awful. And it's not every day that people get to hear like my classroom horror stories. I'm usually reading other people's classroom horror stories, and they're horrific.
Let's hear it.
I'm here for a reason. So like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I was a stream and writing teacher. So science, technology, religion, engineering, arts, math, and writing. So my school had this like really, really cool curriculum that actually came from the Museum of Science in Boston. Okay. So they had like these storybooks where it goes over like these big concepts. Some of them's like, electricity. Other ones are like water pressure and whatever. And so we would read the story, and then we do like a lab. And the whole point is read and learn and then do the lab to try it out. So one of the things that we read was about electricity and circuits. Okay. So my dumbass. So we read the story, and it's just talking about like this. It gave us like a throwback in history to like electricity and how we made circuits and whatever. But the experiment itself was to take, so you took like a piece of copper wire, and you put some tape around it, and you make a circuit, but you wrap it around a little tiny bulb. Okay, so you got a little light bulb, copper wire, tape to put on the wire, and then a battery. So they gave us like a little AA battery. Don't do this at home. For all you little jackasses watching right now, don't do this at home, because I'm about to tell you something not good. So basically what you need to do is like the way that you probably already know this, but the way that a light bulb is on the bottom, you need to wrap one around the side and then touch the battery to the bottom, and then it makes the circuit and the light will go off. So I was like, and this was during COVID. So I'm doing this over a computer, right? So my dumbass is in my classroom, and I'm like, here are our materials. And I did the thing, and the light went up, and I should not have been doing this job. So in my mind, I was like, I got 30 students watching me on Zoom, and I'm like, wait, if we got a lot more copper wire and multiple other batteries, we could probably make this bulb light up really, really, really bright. And the students are like, yeah, probably. like I don't know. And I'm like, hold up. So basically what I did is, instead of one AA, I got like one of those like big bastard batteries, and I lined one up behind the other, and I got 10 of them. Okay. So I multiplied the electrical value times 10, and I connected this copper wire, and I connected to the bulb. So I'm showing this in front of my class, and if there's one thing my strength is, it's hyping up a class. I can get these kids pumped about anything. Okay, the water cycle, I'll have you rapping a verse that's like using like Juicy by Notorious B.I.G. as like the backtrack. We'll get it going. So I got all these kids, and I'm like, should I connect it? Should I connect it? And they're like, freaking yeah. So I'm like getting closer and closer. And then I touch it, and the light is like, it's so bright. It's incredibly, incredibly bright. And all the kids are like, yes, like they're losing their minds. And I'm like, yeah. And then the bulb explodes. directly in front of my face. I'm like, yeah. And the students, so there two things went really bad with this. First off, when it happened, you would have thought that somebody shot a shotgun at my face. It was a like movie grade explosion. And it was like, so it covered my camera. Okay. The second problem was at the exact same moment that the bulb exploded, my computer died. So basically, my students thought that I killed myself with this bulb by accident and that I am now dead in my room. So all my students are at home like, and the worst part of this is you probably know that like when we were all on Zoom, we had to record sessions so that we could show them to the administrators for whatever. So my administrator had full access to this beautiful video, and I don't have it anymore because it was my school's Zoom account. They had this video of me, and it literally looked like I died. It looked like I was shot in the head during this class, and all you see is my screen gets frozen on the yellow and red explosion, and all you see is my students in their little windows like
that is
for like 10 minutes. And after a while, somebody gets off the mic and is like, or turns on their microphone. They're like, is he dead? And I was dying. It was like the best thing in the world. And like in a funny way, like obviously my administrator was like, you're an idiot. But it was in that moment that my students were like, can we do some more experiments? And I was like, yeah, can my eyes, like, can I get my eyesight back first? Like, 'cause I'm like kind of dying over here. But it's like in a weird way, my horror story is also like the most, it's just like the most like clear reason why my students were like, I can get behind that. And in a way, it was like, I loved modeling the fact that like, you're going to screw things up. Do I think you're going to screw things up in a way that looks like manslaughter? I don't know. We're gonna figure it out.
Who knows? No, you gotta keep everyone on their toes.
Thing. And I think that for every horror story is like a story, like at least I can know that all of these, they were fifth graders at the time, which is a horrible grade to watch me almost blow my head off. Like these fifth graders will always be able to say like one day in school, something funny, entertaining, cool, whatever happened. And oddly enough, I took that as a win. You know, because you got to take the wins when you can. But Principal Lamb, this has been such a good time. I feel like, unfortunately, we have similar energy in the way that like we could keep giving off horror stories forever. So I can already hear the people in the comments being like, you're going to bring him back. You're 100% going to bring him back. So if you're open to that, we can absolutely make that happen. No, but it was absolutely amazing to have you here. I want to quickly shout something out. I have merch that I dropped recently. This sweater says, yes, I'm a teacher. No, don't ask how my day was. People, stop buying your teacher's stupid ass mugs. We don't want any more mugs. I have 700 mugs that all say
Mug overload.
We're done with the mugs. Get them something that they'll actually want to wear. Go on the Fishing for Clout merch store on TikTok. It's on Shopify as well if you want to get one of these. They're friggin' awesome. If you get one, DM me so that I can post the picture that you post in it. But above everything, ladies and gentlemen, you could be anywhere, but you're here, and that's friggin' awesome. I absolutely love it. Principal Lamb, you're awesome. I can't wait to see everything else that you keep doing, and we're going to schedule you coming back, like, immediately.
I can't wait. Tyler, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I've had an awesome time and love what you're doing. And let me know how I can order a set of those sweatshirts for the teachers at our school here.
Don't twist my arm because you know that I'm going to. All right, guys, we'll see you again on the next episode of the No One Asked for This podcast, which is the podcast that not a single person asked for. See ya. All right.